The fall of the great Australian dream. Is it gone for good? For generations, the Australian dream has symbolized more than just a house. It has been a cornerstone of identity, a vision of stability, and a testament to hard work. To own a home in the sprawling suburb, with a backyard for weekend barbecues and room to raise a family, was once an attainable milestone for middle-class Australians. But today, the dream that united so many has turned into a stark reality of disappointment for countless citizens. The proverbial quarter-acre block, once a rite of passage, is now a fading hope. As property prices soar, wages stagnate, and inequality deepens, young Australians and first-time buyers find themselves locked out of the market. The great Australian dream has become a mirage in the desert of escalating costs and policy failures. What caused this dramatic shift? And is there hope to revive it? Don't skip the subscribe button as we dive in. The origins of the Australian dream. The concept of the Great Australian Dream emerged in the post-World War II era. Following years of global conflict and economic depression, the mid-20th century brought unprecedented prosperity to Australia. Soldiers returned home to a burgeoning economy, government-backed home ownership schemes, and a belief in boundless opportunity. During this period, owning a home became a near-universal aspiration. The dream wasn't just rhetoric, it was supported by a system designed to ensure that families could achieve it. Suburban developments flourished as the government invested heavily in infrastructure and public housing. By the 1970s, home ownership rates peaked, with over 70% of Australians owning their homes. The quarter-acre block, complete with a modest home, represented the zenith of this golden age. Suburban sprawl mirrored the optimism of a country growing in wealth and opportunity. For many, the family home was not just a shelter but a legacy, a key to intergenerational wealth and a source of national pride. The erosion begins. The fall of the Australian dream began subtly, driven by a combination of economic restructuring, social changes, and shifts in government policy. What happened? 1. The rise of global capital. The liberalisation of Australia's economy in the 1980s, while boosting overall GDP, had unintended consequences for the housing market. Deregulation of banking and the rise of foreign investment turned property into a lucrative asset rather than a home. The real estate market became a playground for speculators, both domestic and international, driving up prices far beyond what average Australians could afford. 2. Urbanisation and population growth. The shift toward urban living placed immense pressure on housing in major cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Population growth, fueled by both immigration and natural increase, concentrated demand in urban areas. While regional areas faced stagnation, city housing markets exploded, creating an affordability crisis for those seeking employment and lifestyle opportunities in urban centres. 3. Generational wealth disparity. Boomer and Gen X homeowners benefited from decades of rising property values, building significant equity. In contrast, millennials and Gen Z buyers face a much harsher landscape, with median house prices in major cities climbing to over 10 times the average annual income. This generational divide is not just financial but cultural. Home ownership has become a symbol of privilege rather than a common achievement. Today, Australia's housing market is among the least affordable in the world. In Sydney, the median house price exceeds $1.3 million, while Melbourne isn't far behind. For young Australians, the prospect of saving a 20% deposit, especially while rents consume an increasing portion of income, feels unattainable. What drives the crisis? 1. Housing as an investment class. Tax policies such as negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts have transformed homes from places to live into wealth-building assets. These incentives encourage property investment, enabling investors to reduce taxable income and reap profits on rising property values. As a result, investors now own a significant share of Australia's residential properties. This trend often places first-home buyers at a disadvantage as they struggle to compete in a market dominated by wealthier players. The shift has contributed to skyrocketing property prices, making home ownership increasingly out of reach for many Australians and reshaping the housing landscape. 2. Supply shortages. Developers' focus on luxury apartments and high-margin projects has left affordable housing in short supply. This imbalance is worsened by restrictive planning regulations and infrastructure bottlenecks, which delay or prevent new developments in areas where housing is most needed. The result is a growing gap between housing demand and supply, particularly for low- and middle-income households. Without significant reforms to encourage the construction of affordable homes and streamline development processes, this issue will continue to deepen, pushing more Australians into housing stress and exacerbating inequality in the housing market. 3. Wage stagnation versus price growth. Over the past 2 decades, house prices in Australia have skyrocketed, far outpacing wage growth. This disparity has created a significant gap between earnings and housing costs, making homeownership increasingly unattainable. Even dual-income households, once considered financially secure, now struggle to save for a deposit or meet rising mortgage repayments. The escalating cost of housing has pushed many potential buyers to the sidelines, fueling demand for rentals and driving up rental prices. This growing affordability crisis underscores the urgent need for systemic reforms to address the imbalance between housing supply, demand, and income levels. 4. Rental market pressures. As homeownership drifts further out of reach, a growing number of Australians are turning to the rental market, increasing demand and driving up rental prices. The great Australian dream of owning a home has, for many, been replaced by the harsh reality of struggling to secure stable and affordable housing. This shift is leaving renters vulnerable to rising costs, limited tenure security, and competition for suitable properties. The trend highlights a pressing need for policy solutions that address both the rental crisis and the broader challenges in Australia's housing market, ensuring access to safe and affordable housing for all. Social consequences of a broken dream. 1. The decline of stability. Homeownership has long been a cornerstone of stability and community for Australians, offering not just a place to live, but a foundation for building a secure future. In contrast, renting often brings uncertainty, with short-term leases and the constant risk of displacement. This instability can be particularly challenging for families, as frequent moves disrupt children's education, hinder their ability to form lasting friendships, and weaken social ties. For parents, the stress of finding and affording suitable rental accommodation adds another layer of pressure. The transient nature of renting also impacts broader community cohesion, as renters are less likely to establish deep connections with their neighbours or invest in local initiatives. Addressing these challenges requires policies that promote long-term rental security and affordability, alongside efforts to make homeownership more accessible. Without action, the growing divide between renters and homeowners risks undermining the social fabric of Australian communities. 2. Widening inequality. The divide between property owners and renters in Australia is widening, with significant implications for wealth inequality. Rising property values have enriched homeowners and investors, while leaving renters struggling to keep up with soaring costs. This growing disparity risks creating a permanent underclass of renters, excluded from the financial stability and wealth accumulation that homeownership provides. For many, the inability to break into the property market means missing out on the economic benefits of asset appreciation, leaving them vulnerable to housing insecurity and limited opportunities for upward mobility. As housing becomes an increasingly exclusive asset, the wealth gap deepens, entrenching inequality across generations. Without intervention, the Australian dream of homeownership may become a privilege reserved for the few. 3. Mental health and well-being. Housing insecurity is more than an economic issue. It's a significant driver of mental health challenges. The stress of rising rents, intense competition for limited housing, and the seemingly insurmountable barrier to homeownership weigh heavily on younger generations. For many, the constant uncertainty of where they will live or how they will afford it exacerbates anxiety and depression. The inability to establish stable living conditions impacts all aspects of life, from relationships and career decisions to overall well-being. The psychological toll of feeling stuck in a cycle of renting with no clear pathway to homeownership is profound. Without action, the mental health effects of housing insecurity will continue to burden future generations. 4. Delayed life milestones. The housing affordability crisis is reshaping life choices for many young Australians, leading them to delay or forego major milestones such as starting a family or buying a home. The financial burden of saving for a deposit, coupled with rising rents and stagnant wages, has left many feeling uncertain about their future. This trend is not just an individual concern. It carries long-term implications for Australia's social and economic fabric. Declining birth rates and delayed family formation could impact workforce growth, economic productivity, and social services reliant on population expansion. Additionally, postponing milestones like homeownership reduces intergenerational wealth transfer, further entrenching inequality. These demographic shifts highlight the need for comprehensive reforms to address housing affordability. By increasing the supply of affordable housing, reforming tax incentives, and improving rental security, Australia can create an environment where young people feel empowered to pursue their life goals without being held back by housing concerns. Can the dream be revived? While the challenges are immense, solutions exist. Addressing the housing crisis will require bold policy changes, societal shifts, and a reimagining of what the Australian dream means in the 21st century. Policy interventions and cultural shifts. 1. Tax reform. Reforming tax incentives is crucial to curbing speculative investment in housing. Phasing out negative gearing, which allows investors to offset losses against income, would reduce the appeal of property speculation. Similarly, lowering capital gains tax, CGT discounts would discourage short-term property flipping. These changes would shift the focus of the housing market from being a commodity for investors to being a necessity for owner-occupiers. With fewer tax breaks for investors, more people would be encouraged to purchase homes to live in, making housing more accessible and helping stabilize prices for those who need it most. 2. Affordable housing initiatives. Governments must take a leading role in developing affordable housing through public-private partnerships, increasing social housing stock, and offering subsidies for first-home buyers. By collaborating with private developers, the government can accelerate the construction of affordable housing and address the shortage. Expanding social housing will provide stable options for vulnerable populations, ensuring they are not priced out of the market. Additionally, subsidies for first-home buyers can make home ownership more attainable, easing pressure on the broader housing market. These efforts can create a more equitable housing landscape, offering security to those in need while helping to stabilize prices. 3. Regional development. Strategic investment in regional infrastructure, transportation, and job creation is key to encouraging population shifts away from overcrowded urban centers. By improving connectivity and access to essential services, people can be incentivized to move to regional areas, reducing the strain on city housing markets. This approach alleviates housing demand in urban areas while helping to revitalize rural economies. Expanding job opportunities in these regions fosters economic growth and attracts talent, creating more balanced and sustainable development. A shift towards regional living not only eases housing pressures but also promotes greater equity and prosperity across the country. 4. Renter protections. Enhancing tenant rights through longer lease terms, rent control, and anti-discrimination measures can significantly improve stability for renters. Longer leases offer security, reducing the uncertainty of frequent relocations, while rent control helps prevent unaffordable rent hikes, making housing more predictable and financially manageable. Anti-discrimination measures ensure that all individuals, regardless of background, have fair access to housing. Together, these reforms reduce the mental and financial stress that comes with insecure housing, empowering tenants to live without fear of abrupt changes. Such policies foster a more stable and equitable rental market, benefiting both tenants and communities. 5. Boosting supply. Streamlining planning and approval processes, alongside offering incentives for affordable housing construction, can help address supply shortages in high-demand areas. By reducing bureaucratic delays and simplifying regulations, more housing can be built quickly to meet growing demand. Developers should be encouraged to build homes for a wide range of income levels, not just luxury properties, through incentives such as tax breaks or density bonuses. This approach ensures a more balanced housing market, with options available for both low-income and middle-class families. It helps create diverse communities, alleviating pressure on the housing market and promoting greater affordability. 6. Redefining success. The traditional Australian dream of property ownership may no longer be attainable for everyone, given rising housing costs. Shifting societal values to embrace alternative housing solutions, such as co-living, cooperative housing, or long-term rental models, can provide stability and affordability without the need for home ownership. Co-living arrangements offer shared spaces and reduced living costs, fostering community and social support. Cooperative housing allows residents to have a say in decisions while benefiting from affordable rents. Long-term rental models provide secure housing without the financial burden of homeownership. Embracing these alternatives can help create a more inclusive and sustainable housing landscape. 7. Sustainability in housing. As environmental concerns grow, compact, energy-efficient homes and urban densification could become the new standard for housing. These models align with modern lifestyles by promoting efficient use of space and resources, reducing energy consumption, and minimizing waste. Energy-efficient homes incorporate sustainable technologies like solar power, better insulation, and smart appliances, which lower carbon footprints. Urban densification reduces the need for expansive development, preserving natural landscapes and promoting public transportation. By focusing on these environmentally conscious housing solutions, we can ensure that future generations inherit sustainable, livable environments that support both urban growth and ecological preservation. The great Australian dream of home ownership has not disappeared. It has evolved, reshaped by the economic, social, and political forces of our time. While the challenges facing Australia's housing market are immense, they are not insurmountable. Rising property prices, a lack of affordable housing, and an increasingly competitive rental market have placed unprecedented pressure on Australians. Yet these issues also present an opportunity for transformation. Addressing this crisis requires bold policy innovation, such as reforming tax incentives, increasing investment in affordable housing, and streamlining planning processes. It also demands community-driven action and a cultural shift in how Australians view housing, not just as an asset, but as a fundamental right. Collaborative efforts between governments, developers, and communities can help restore balance to the housing system, ensuring it serves all Australians equitably. The pivotal question remains: will Australia rise to meet this challenge, or will future generations view the Australian dream as a casualty of greed and neglect? The answer will define more than the housing market. It will shape the nation's values, identity, and aspirations. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel as we work towards making the Australian dream great again. Until next time, keep sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the dream can be revived?